Alright guys, so let's go ahead and get right into this. Before we pull apart the axle, I do want to go over a few things, and I also want to insert some videos of the Jeep actually wheeling on 37s with the completely stock Dana 30 front. Now, there's a difference between it can do it and it should do it, and I think this falls somewhere in between there, and it definitely depends on your wheeling style. So for me, I always kept in mind that I had a Dana 30 in the front and that it was completely stock and odds were it was going to break. But I also just accepted that, and I did plan an axle swap for a while. So I knew if it did break, I would simply get it towed home and do the axle swap and get it back out on the trails. If you're not planning on doing an axle swap and you really don't want to do anything axle-wise to your Jeep, I would 100% not recommend 37s on a Dana 30 because it is a matter of when it's going to break. Now, they are not very strong. The failing point is the ring and pinion, and that's very expensive to be replaced if you're not going to do it yourself. With that being said, though, I do feel as if the Dana 30 gets a lot more hate than what it deserves online. The axle really did hold up a lot better than I expected. Now, I was fairly easy on it, did not like bounce it off rocks or anything like that for the most part, but I did in a couple situations, and it still held up really, really well, and much more than I expected considering everybody online hates on it. It says how weak it is and everything like that. The weak point is the ring and pinion gear, so I mean, just adding trusses and sleeves will help with bending the housing and everything, but it's not going to fix the weak point. I also did not have chromoly shafts or anything like that because if the ring and pinion were already the weak point, I didn't want to guarantee break that versus an axle shaft because an axle shaft is way more easy to replace. Now, there are a lot of variables that go into running 37s on a Dana 30, and I do see a lot of people out there wanting to put a locker in it and they want to run 37s, and a lot of times they want to put in like a cheap locker that it's not a selectable locker like the ARB ones or the Rubicon ones where it's electric and on a switch. So what you run into there is the 37s are too big to run on the Dana 30 with a locker. You'll just destroy the front axle, and at that point you might as well have upgraded to a Dana 44 with the amount of money you spent on the locker and building up the Dana 30. It's really not worth building a Dana 30 in my opinion, and a lot of other people's opinions. It's just, I would rather put that money into at least upgrading to a Dana 44 front, if not just saving that up for a 1-ton swap, whether that be with fusion axles. There's so many different options out there. You could build a junkyard set for a lot cheaper than you could buy some of the other ones. But in all honesty, it's really not worth building a Dana 30. It's just a lot of money put into something that's eventually going to break. And another thing to keep in mind when you are upping the tire size on your Dana 30 is gear ratio. So for example, I run 40s with 513 gears in my Wrangler, and before that there were 37s on I believe 373 gears, which is not optimal by any means. It's actually a terrible setup all around gear ratio wise. So if you want to run 37s for a while and do not plan on upgrading your axle or anything like that, you'll need to re-gear, which is fairly expensive in comparison to buying, say, a Rubicon 44 front axle or a set of Rubicon axles.
You get up here, stop.
Expensive. So that's another thing to keep in mind when you are going to put these bigger tires on a smaller axle that's not designed for these tires. But like I said earlier, it's totally doable. I'm not exactly sure on how long it's doable because that all comes down to how you wheel it, how you exactly have it set up. Like I said, if you put a locker in it, it's really not going to last too long. But it's definitely doable depending on your wheeling style. I didn't really beat on it as you've seen on these videos. I kind of kept in mind that I had a Dana 30, I had a weak front axle, and I kept that in mind when I was off-roading. Did not bounce it off of rocks, didn't go send it on rev limiter up some hills or anything like that because that would have broken the axle. I also did it because I had planned an axle swap. I doubt I would have done it had I not planned on swapping the axles. So it all comes down to that if you want to make the decision. This video is just giving you my feedback and what I found when running this setup to help you make your choice. So let's go ahead and jump into pulling the axle apart. I have it actually sitting in the garage because I'm going to be building it to put underneath of the Grand Cherokee that we're building. And so I have it fully pulled apart, and I figured now would be a good time to show you guys the internals, show you guys any damage done by the 37s on the axle and all of that stuff. So let's go ahead and pull that apart. So here it is, guys, the Dana 30 out of the Wrangler. It's got a truss, gussets, and a couple other things on it right now. There's the 37s that were on it. None of the trusses or gussets or any of that were on this axle when it was underneath of the Wrangler. That's only on it now because it'll be going under the Grand Cherokee with a set of 35s. Also, an update on the Wrangler new transfer case, well, used new to me transfer cases here. I gotta wait until I can get the other part of the transfer case from my friend's house because it's got the yoke on it I need. But pretty much ready to bolt in underneath the Jeep, get everything set up. So that should be back soon. But let's go ahead and dive into any issues this has. So for starters, let's go over the ring and pinion just because that's the weak point of these axles, and I'll show you guys if there's any damage here. So to my surprise, when we drained this diff, when I pulled it out from underneath the Wrangler a couple months ago, there was really no issues with it. Let me just light it up with the flashlight, show you guys all the gears and everything. I was kind of expecting it to be worn really, really bad and there'd be some issues in here, but all in all, it's really not messed up at all, and I would be confident putting this back underneath of the Grand Cherokee and running it however many more miles and being fine. Now, these are the factory gears. These gears are from 2008, so they are going to show a little bit of wear just from because it had 130,000 miles on it, and that's what happens. But there's no chips, there's no broken teeth, there's nothing like that. So also the housing is not bent at all, which I mean, I didn't bounce it like I said, but let's go over axle shafts. So none of the splines are twisted. That was kind of a concern of it because if you bounce it too much, it can twist the splines on the factory shafts pretty easily. But as you guys can see, they're straight as can be. There's no issues there. So all in all, the axles held up pretty well. Now, the only spot it did wear is the ball joints, but that's because we put huge heavy tires with beadlocks and everything onto an axle and ball joints that were not designed for it. But they very well could be the stock ball joints from 2008. I have no idea. I never replaced them myself. But pretty simple fix and really not too much damage considering what we put this axle through. And it held up very well. Now, this is not me saying you should definitely go put 37s on your Dana 30. This is just me showing you my experience with that setup and what happened to my front axle. I had never seen a video of someone pulling their axle apart after they did it, so I figured I'd show you guys that. So with that being said, I think it's definitely doable. It's a possibility, and it kind of depends on a couple things. Whether you want lockers, I would not lock a Dana 30. It's just asking for it to blow up and get destroyed. It also depends on your wheeling style. I would not go really hard rock crawling, or I wouldn't go bouncing it off of rocks or anything like that with a Dana 30. That's also asking for it to be destroyed and blow up your front axle. And like I said earlier, the weak point of these axles are the ring and pinion, and that's relatively expensive to have replaced if you're not planning on doing it yourself. And that would be one of those things where it might be better just to put the money into swapping in a Dana 44 front and having a much stronger setup for 37s. So comment down below if you guys also have anything to input on this topic of if you can run 37s on a Dana 30. This video is just showing my experience. This isn't saying do it or don't do it. This might help out someone who's considering doing the setup. And comment down below what you guys think, if you should run them, if you shouldn't run them. Interested to hear on you guys' experience and what happened with your axles. Now, before the video ends, it is time to announce the winner of the giveaway. So you guys actually killed it with the support of this giveaway, and I wanted to thank you guys for that before we go over the winner. A ton of people entered, and it was awesome to be able to give something back to you guys. I'm definitely going to try to do more giveaways like this in the future. And also a huge shout out to Rock Monster USA. They've hooked it up with the hood. It's absolutely my favorite hood I've ever seen on a Jeep. And they hooked it up with some products for a giveaway. So a huge shout out to them. If you guys haven't checked them out, make sure you guys go ahead and do that. With that being said, let's go ahead and go over the winner. So the winner is Jeremy Johnson. Please go ahead and send me a message on Instagram at RockyTVOfficial, and we'll get your shipping information and all that, and we'll get this thing shipped out to you. But again, guys, thank you all for the support on this giveaway. We'll definitely do some more. Comment below some products that you'd like to see us give away, and maybe I can make that happen for you guys.